Hello, is Rainy there, please?
This is Rainy. This sounds very familiar, this voice. Is this Lolly?
This is Lolly. Welcome back to the pod, girlfriend.
So good to be here.
I want to just say hello and welcome to a few new listeners before we get into the case today. I've been watching those stats, those analytics, and our numbers, they are going up. They go down sometimes, guys. It's not always perfection over here, but at the moment we're getting a little spike in our listens. So I want to say welcome to the Can't Handle, the Crime and Scandal family. And I want to give you a little rundown on how the pod works.
You tell him, Lolly.
I'm going to tell him, Rainy. So it's Lolly here. Rainy and I, we are twin sisters. Rainy is in New Zealand, where we are originally from. We're Kiwis. And I am living in Australia.
It's a goddamn tragedy, guys. I mean, twins living across the ditch from each other. I just can't handle this crime and scandal.
It should be illegal. But we're living in this nightmare hell of a reality. What we do is every week we jump on a call. It's not really a call. I know you heard the ringtone, but we jump on, we tell each other true crime stories. You're here to hang with us through the twin hang, to listen to these horrific stories and ultimately be a twin with us. Okay?
Absolutely.
Welcome, guys. We absolutely love doing the pod and we're so stoked to have you with us.
We appreciate you.
Rainy, today's story is absolutely wild. I cannot believe that this case isn't bigger than it is. It probably is in the country where it all happened, but I'd never heard of it. I'm sure you've never heard of it either. I'm going to take you on so many twists and turns. It's going to blow your mind.
I'm quite intrigued.
All right. Shall we do it?
Yeah, baby girl. Woo!
All right. Come on in, guys. Take a seat. Let's go. Our story begins in a little town called Pontyland in England. Sounds pretty cute.
Sounds so cute.
And Rainy, our story begins in a classroom at Pontyland High School in the late 70s. Helen Bailey sits at her desk, staring out the window, daydreaming of a time when these godforsaken lessons will be over.
Don't we all?
She is done with this shithole of a place. Sorry, Pontyland. I don't know if it's actually a shithole, but you know what it's like in high school.
The classroom.
You know, you daydream of those adult years when you can be out there working, doing your own thing. If I can be honest, guys, it fucking sucks. So stay in school.
That's right.
Oh, gosh. But Helen she was a little on the geeky side. She loved to bury her head in the books, and Helen was an avid writer. She loved to put pen to paper, and she would just write and write and write. So for some of us after high school, maybe we were, hanging out at the mall, smoking cigarettes, kissing boys.
Drinking some rocket fuel we just stole from Mama's old liquor cabinet, a little Jim Beam, Karuba rum. Not saying that was me, but
it wasn't.
It could have been.
But it definitely wasn't Helen, okay? Helen was at home putting pen to paper, and she would just write and write and write. She'd write a lot about school, almost turning what was happening at school into these little mini novels. She loved it. Helen would eventually go on to be a celebrated author. She would write over 20 novels, Rainy. So these early years were prepping her for a pretty successful career as an author.
Go Helen.
But, in the creative world, the path to success, it's not linear, it's not a straight line. And after high school, she would dibble and dabble in a few other careers. At one point, she wanted to be a forensic scientist. She even got a job working in a lab, I believe, testing on animals. Helen, you bitch.
Helen.
Don't do that. But we still love Helen. But also, girl, she dropped out of that. It wasn't for her. She was working at a licensing agency. So working by day, but by night, our girl Helen, she was writing and writing and writing.
She must have had a sore hand.
I know, right? It's like now when you're on your phone, oh my God, how sore is your hand? These doom scrolls are giving me carpal tunnel.
Carpal tunnel. I love a good doom scroll.
As the years went on, Helen would write, as I mentioned, 22 novels. A lot of these novels were aimed towards young adults, kids, teenagers. Look, guys, I don't know about you. How many books were you reading? I feel like maybe this is a little embarrassing. The only book I've ever read. Are you ready?
3, 2, 1. Goosebumps!
Oh, God. Wasn't much of a reader. Loved to sing, write music, but look, wasn't super academic. Me and Rainey just a lot of street smarts, though, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Very street smart. Anyway, back to the story. Helen, she was crushing it. She met the man of her dreams, John Sinfield. These guys would get married. Both successful, raking in good money. They would get a little dash hound named Boris. And
Boris,
I know. And 22 years of marriage later, thousands of books sold. These guys, they've really made it.
Yeah.
They have made it. In 2011, Helen turned to John and said, "You know what, honey? We have been working our butts off and we deserve a holiday."
Absolutely.
John thought this was a pretty fabulous idea, and they decided to head to the tropical paradise of Barbados. This is where John and Helen got married about 15 years prior. So they thought, what a wonderful thing to go on a holiday to the place where it all began, where we got married.
Beautiful.
So much has changed. At this stage, Helen is in her late 40s. John, he is actually in his 60s, a little older. These guys packed up their bikinis and swim trunks and they went to Barbados. Are we saying swim trunks? We're saying it.
Did Boris go too?
Boris did not go. So these guys are living it up in Barbados. And on the 27th of February 2011, they have a delicious breakfast at their beautiful resort and they head down to the beach. John decides to go for a little dip, takes off his glasses, jumps off the sun lounger and heads into the water. Helen calls out, "Be careful, darling." And then she goes back to relaxing in the sunshine. Now, this relaxation would be interrupted by the panicked screams of her husband coming from the water. Helen looks up and to her shock, she can see John has been pulled out to sea by a rip, and she stands there helplessly, not being able to do anything to help John.
Oh, worst nightmare. Worst
nightmare. The beachgoers managed to bring him back to shore, but tragically, John has drowned.
This is why you don't go swimming past your ankles.
Honestly, I went to the beach yesterday and Rainey told me to be safe. I said, "Don't worry, I didn't go past the ankles." And she said, "That's what I like to hear."
Absolutely. Fuck that.
I'm not doing it. But guys, if there is ever anything you remember or take away from this podcast, it is this one vital bit of information. If you're swimming in the ocean and you get pulled out by a rip, do not panic. Do not try and swim back to shore. This is how majority of people will drown in a rip. If you are caught in this rip, because quite often it looks like the calm part in the ocean, so where there's like minimal waves, this is where I would probably swim.
You're like, "Ooh, so safe."
Oh, this looks good. But it's pulling back out to the ocean quite quickly. So this rip current will pull you about 2 to 3 meters out per second. So you can imagine it doesn't take very long. So what they say is that most people will try and swim back to shore. They'll get tired and they'll drown. So you can let the current just continue to take you and then swim parallel to the beach. So don't swim back to shore, go sideways. Let's hope this never happens.
Well, it won't happen to us.
It certainly won't. No, that's right. So this is absolutely tragic. Helen, 22 years with John, gone on this holiday. And in her own words, she said she was a wife at breakfast and a widow by lunch.
That's just horrific.
She's had to pack up their room, get back on a plane. John's not there beside her.
Gosh.
And go back to her life in England. Massive life changes. She's absolutely devastated. It's just Helen and Boris left behind to pick up the pieces. But Helen turns to the one thing that has always helped her in the past, and that is her writing. A few months after John's tragic death, Helen would go on to create a blog called Planet Grief. Now, this was a blog where she would pour her heart and soul about the process of all of a sudden becoming a widow. Of course, the internet, it's a very populated place, so a lot of people that were going through a similar situation to Helen gravitated towards this blog because Helen had this beautiful way of articulating what these people were going through. She could put it into these beautiful words and it just touched so many people. So Planet Grief blew up in the blogosphere, Rainey.
Wow.
Helen and Boris, they're doing okay. Helen had a great way of creating a little bit of humor around the situation. I know that sounds really dark, but she was able to add a lightness to the situation, which I think people resonated with that side of it as well. Because losing a lifelong partner, a sibling, a child, a mother, it sucks, guys. It's not very nice.
It does suck. And I feel like sometimes people do make things a little more humorous to help cope in a lot of situations.
100%.
Joke about it. At the time we were in a plane, we thought we were going to crash and we were just...
This is hilarious.
That's just the best time of our lives. You know?
I do recall
deflect.
that. It's probably a little bit like this podcast. We have little light humor weaving its way through just so we can get through it. God damn it. So Helen's doing great. She's got a fan base. She's really put herself into the bereavement community. I mean, it sounds so depressing.
It does sound depressing.
She's in it, okay, because she's going through it. Helen was a part of a bereavement community page on Facebook, and she would get a chittin' and a chattin' with Ian Stewart.
Ian.
As Helen described him as her gorgeous, grey-haired widower. Ian had lost his wife the year before. She had epilepsy, and unfortunately, he found her. She'd had an epileptic fit and had passed away. It was horrific.
Oh.
He had gone to the bereavement community page, just like Helen, to connect with other people that were going through similar situations. So these guys, they start off chatting. In the beginning, super platonic, nothing romantic, but they get chatting and they really enjoy each other's company. Soon, Helen and Ian would be meeting at the park, taking little Boris for a walk, and it didn't take long for this relationship to bloom into something more than just friends.
Well, what a place to be. I know you're going through the same thing. One thing you're talking, the next thing you're bonking. You're bonking through it all, you know?
I mean, what else can you do, loves?
You're bonking through the grief. Oh, Ian.
Oh, Ian.
Sorry.
Oh, my God. But Rainey, this didn't actually go down that well with the blog community because Helen had met Ian the same year that she lost her husband. So February 2011, towards the end of 2011, Helen was in a relationship with Ian.
Damn,
it is
girl.
Quite quick. It didn't go down very well, but at the same time, if they're helping each other out, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about it. I guess I feel like, that's a little soon, and I can see how people would be weird about it, but also just let her be, guys.
Well, it's not like she's going to get back with her husband.
I'm going to cry.
That's the truth.
Not in this realm. Eventually, but not in this realm, Rainey. You're right.
But she's not. I mean, there's no jealousy issues.
No, and obviously John would want Helen to be happy, maybe not that soon, but eventually.
I think so, how long do you have to wait?
How long do you have to wait? So she copped a lot of backlash, but she didn't care because Ian really was helping her get through her grief. Vice versa, these guys, they were loved up. And by 2013, they would move to a town called Royston. Boss babe Helen buys a £1.5 million house, big, beautiful house. These two would move in together. Ian had 2 young adult sons, so they would move in. Boris was there. They were just one big, happy family.
Beautiful.
Eventually, Helen and Ian would even get engaged, Rainey.
Oh, I mean, who can be bothered?
She is just starting again. She wasn't really doing the blog too much, but she did decide to turn the blog into a book. So in 2015, she wrote a book called When Bad Things Happen in Good Bikinis.
She must have really liked that bikini.
Remember, Helen she'd bring a little bit of humor to get through what was happening. She does say on her blog and in the book, one thing she remembers is when all of this was going down with her husband, in her mind she was saying, but I'm wearing a bikini. Like she was literally standing in a bikini when she was told the news that her husband had died. On the front of the book, it's a suitcase with a bikini hanging out and Boris, the dash hound, sitting on top.
Oh.
And it's just documenting her whole experience with grief. And at the very end of the book. And finally, this book is dedicated to my gorgeous grey-haired widower. I love you. You are my happy ending. Really beautiful that she could come full circle. She's met this man. He's gone through the same thing and they are starting a new life together. So Ian lost his wife, Diane. They'd been together for over 30 years. So he was going through the same thing too. Ian was a retired software engineer. He'd had some medical issues. So he was actually only in his early 50s, but he was unable to work because he had some health issues. But remember, Helen, she was quite well off. They were just having a great life together. April 11th, 2016. Ian is out running some errands. He's been to the doctor. He's been to the solicitor. He's been doing a few things. And he arrives back to his beautiful big home in Royston. He enters the home, and to his surprise, it's empty. No sign of Helen. No sign of Boris. His sons aren't home either. Not too unusual, but he did expect her to be home. He's walking through the house, checking all the rooms, and he finds a note. This note was from Helen. It said to Ian, I just need some space. I'm going to be heading to the holiday home in Broadstairs. She hadn't been doing that great of recent times. Right. It wasn't unusual for her to take some time on her own. Remember, she's a writer as well. Sometimes these writers, they just seem to go off and have a little, I don't know, try and deal with their writer's block on their own. So he's okay, well.
Fair enough.
He gives it a day. He's had no word from Helen. He decides to go out to the holiday home the next day. She's not there. There's actually no sign that anyone's been there.
Oh, Helen.
Helen and Boris have disappeared. Well, because Boris is gone, so she's taken her dog. Helen and Boris were super close. Like, Boris was from her previous relationship. This was her fur baby. Helen had no children. Boris was the love of her life, legit. Yeah. Like, Ian is in second place here. Ian reaches out to friends and family. No one's heard from her. And he kind of just sits around and waits. He doesn't know what to do. No one has seen or heard from her. So 4 days later, Ian decides to call 999.
4 days?
4 days.
Why? That's ridiculous.
Hertfordshire, please, how can I help?
Hello there. My partner has been missing since Monday and not contacted anyone. Said she was going away, hasn't ended up where she said she was going. So we've just decided we should report it.
What's your partner's name?
Helen Bailey.
And what's her date of birth?
Oh, crikey. God, she phoned me there. 22nd. Right, just let me double check. 1 second. Oh, God.
Her eye colour.
Oh, my God. How do you forget these things? I don't know at the moment. Sorry, it's just gone out of my head.
Blank, that's no problem.
Sorry. God, that's terrible. She left a note. She said in the note something like, I need space and time alone. I'm going to Broadstairs. Please don't contact me in any way.
And was that note a bit of a shock? Were you expecting it at all?
No, I wasn't. Well, yes, it was a shock.
Oh, dear.
What colour is her eyes? Oh, gosh, you got me the darnest time.
Oh, my God, Ian.
What the hell, Ian?
At this stage, Ian and Helen have been together for like 4 years. They're engaged to be married, and he doesn't remember her birth date or her eye colour. It's not good.
I mean, is he just a little bit of a gold digger? Wow. In for the cash.
This is interesting. We finally have Ian reporting Helen missing.
Surprised he knows what she looks like.
Look, Mark's eye colour, he says they're green. I say they're bluey green. He gets very offended. You can get a little confused, but it's quite an important detail.
You're looking at them every single day.
That doesn't mean that he's had anything to do with Helen's disappearance, but very, very strange. So the police are looking into the disappearance. Friends and family are so concerned. It's just very, very out of character. The public appeal would go out for any sightings or any witnesses, and some reports would come in. A neighbour had seen Helen and Boris walking their dog the morning of April 11th, and that would be the last known sighting of Helen. It would come to light that Helen wasn't actually feeling that well over the last few months, and she was quite concerned about her health. Her mum had said that Helen was feeling quite panicked about some of her symptoms. She was feeling incredibly lethargic. She was experiencing memory loss. She was very, very out of it, feeling very, very tired all the time. And she just didn't know what was wrong. She was Googling her symptoms. A few things had happened that had really scared her. She had gone to walk Boris down at the park and then she just left him there and went home. Just forgot to take Boris. And remember, Boris is her baby. So this was very strange. She recalls coming home from the shops with items that she didn't remember choosing or paying for. At one point, she doesn't recognize her hands as being hers. So,
oh gosh, it's possessed.
She's losing her marbles.
Damn.
Friends and family are concerned that has she gotten lost? Has she gone somewhere? Can't remember how to get home. This happens with people that have dementia and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say early onset dementia.
Yeah, you hear those horrible stories where people like go for a walk and then they can't find their way back. And it's very terrible.
Die in a bush somewhere.
The police are concerned that maybe she's hurt herself, maybe something's happened. Massive public appeal. Have you seen Helen? Helen was a huge fan of the Arsenal football team, but she was a big fan, season ticket holder. They even put her on the big screen at one of the games saying, have you seen Helen? There was efforts going out to reach as many people as possible, and no one had seen Helen. Weeks and weeks would go by. And at this stage, there is no activity on Helen's phone, no activity with her bank accounts. So the police are thinking that this is looking very bad. So attention would turn to Ian.
Of course, I mean, naturally, that's where you go and they don't remember what your partner looks like.
That's right. How can he find Helen? He doesn't know what she looks like.
I can't help.
As they start to look a little more closely to Ian, they just find some of his behaviour a little strange. You see, over the next few weeks after Helen's initial disappearance, it would come to light that Ian was trying to sell one of Helen's properties. On the day of her disappearance, he had actually gone to a solicitor to start the arrangements of a property sale.
Really?
He had also seen the real estate agents and told them that he has power of attorney and wanted to go ahead with selling this flat. The real estate agents were like, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to wait for Helen to come back. This is a little strange.
Dodgy.
If your partner, if your fiancé is going missing, are you really going to worry about selling a property? Helen's got a lot of money. There is no need to be selling properties right now.
Sounds a little strange. Look at Lacey Peterson just going off and selling her car, going to go sell the house. I mean, it doesn't, at least hold on for it, like for 12 months, guys. Not trying to give you advice, but it's like,
I know, just give it some time, guys. He decides to go on holiday, Rainey.
Oh.
Ian and Helen were planning some holiday. Everything was paid and booked for. So Ian thought, I better not let it go to waste. I'm going to go and have a good time. So he goes on holiday for a couple of weeks.
When you go?
No, you wouldn't go because what if Helen comes back? Where is Helen?
I'm joking, but was it non-refundable?
I know. Some of these Airbnb friggin' fees are out of control. But no, he had to go on his holiday. Go. He also purchased new season Arsenal tickets because obviously he's a big fan. He would increase his monthly allowance from £600 to £4,000. So Sugar Mama Helen was taking care of Ian and was giving him obviously some money to buy, I don't know, coffees. And he had increased that amount. So all of this behaviour is a little odd. Look, if Helen was the breadwinner and Ian didn't have any income coming in, you can see why he would probably increase that amount. But it would also come to light that Helen had made Ian the sole beneficiary on her will. So if anything happened to her, he would get her £3.4 million fortune and be taken care of.
Well, to be fair, Boris can't spend it, can he?
He can't. She doesn't have any kids. So look, she's got a brother, she's got parents, but Ian was going to be very, very well looked after if anything happened to Helen.
Yeah.
There's also speculation that because Helen's health wasn't very good, she was maybe worried that something was happening to her. They still can't really pin anything on Ian because they don't know where Helen is. They don't have a body, so they can't really do anything. The weeks and weeks would go by. Multiple searches at their big property, and one day when they are looking around the backyard, a neighbour comes over to have a chat and says, have you checked the cesspit?
The cesspit?
The cesspit. Now, a cesspit, I don't know if we have that over this side of the world. I'm sure we do in these older properties. But a cesspit is a sealed underground tank and it stores waste, sewage, wastewater.
Ugh.
It's gross.
Sounds zesty.
It's nasty. So
Ew.
they have a cesspit on the property. It has been searched. So they're like, yes, we have. The neighbour goes, no, there's 2 cesspits. Have you searched the other cesspit?
Oh, no.
And they're like, where's the other one? In the garage, in the garage, Helen's car is parked in the garage. Also, red flags. Where's Helen? She hasn't taken a car.
I mean, good one, Ian. you
Maybe
big
she's
dick.
got 2 cars. I don't really know. But Helen's car is in the garage. So the police reverse Helen's car out of the garage. And there in the concrete floor lays a little square lid. So Helen's car was parked over this lid. And on the 11th of July, 2016, they would open the lid to the second cesspit. Now, I don't know exactly what has happened, but I can only imagine they lean over the cesspit, dark, murky, stinky, with a putrid smell. They get their torches and they shine it into the cesspit. And there, protruding out of the water, Rainey, is a human arm.
Oh, for fudge cakes, honestly.
For fudge cakes?
Oh.
I know. So 3 months after Helen has gone missing, to the day, the police would arrest Ian Stewart on the suspicion of murdering Helen Bailey. I've seen the body cam footage and Ian, he's like, oh, you're joking. Oh, what? Oh, and he sits down. They're being so nice to him. If this was America, they would be bloody put him on the ground in a headlock. But this lovely lady is reading him his rights, asks him if he needs some water. I mean, punch him in the head, lady. So they take him away in for questioning. They are interrogating Ian at this point. They are bringing up all of the information that they have, and he is silent. He does not say one word, nothing. He's been pretty cooperative up until this point. They've arrested him, and he will not say anything. A few days later, Rainey, they would have to excavate this cesspit to get an idea of what exactly was down there. They don't know if this is definitely Helen. Like, who knows? Maybe it's another body down in the cesspit.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures. They would tear this whole area apart. This cesspit, it's essentially like a well. So they have to dig out the concrete. It's all this big brick encasing of the cesspit. They would finally get in and be able to reveal the true contents of what was in the cesspit. And they would discover the body of Helen Bailey with her
Helen.
dash hound,
Oh,
Boris.
No. Not Boris.
And Boris's toys.
No. Oh, my
Yeah.
God. Boris's toys.
Honestly, Rainey, I mean, okay, it's one thing to murder a human, but a dash hound? Are you for real?
And his toys? Oh, my God, that's horrible. Oh, my God.
Rainey, this fuckery piece of poo, Ian Stewart,
Ian fucking cesspit.
Ian Cesspit Stewart would be awaiting trial. He hasn't said anything, and it wouldn't take long. They move fast in England, so he's been arrested July 11th, 2016. By January 2017, so 6 months later, this thing was in the courts going to trial. Ian has pled not guilty. He is denying all charges. He had absolutely nothing to do with Helen Bailey's murder.
No, not possible.
But the prosecution would disagree. They claim that this was murder for money. £3.4 million. This fortune would go to Ian, and he was driven by greed. So remember, 3 months prior to Helen's disappearance, Helen had made Ian the sole beneficiary of her will. So this was your motive. They've said that he has preyed upon vulnerable women in the bereavement community until he has found someone that he can pounce on. But Ian, he's finally ready to talk, Rainey. And he has a very different story to tell. He was ready to reveal the truth.
Come on, Ian.
What was happening, Rainey, was for several months, 2 men had been showing up to the house.
Oh, of course they have.
Demanding money from Helen. These men were tied up with her previous husband, and he had some debts to pay. £500,000 worth of debt. So he claims that on the 11th of April, these two men that went by the names of Nick and Joe came to the house and kidnapped Helen and took her and Boris away.
There are always these generic names. It was Nick and Joe. I mean, come on. Was it Nick Smith and Joe Andrews?
Probably. And they kidnapped Helen. They were not going to give her back until they had received their £500,000 of debt to be repaid. He has spoken to Helen 4 days later after the kidnapping, and she has, I'm fine, everything's going to be okay. But obviously, Nick and Joe were lying, and they had no intention of returning Helen and Boris back to the house safely. They must have returned to the house and put Helen and Boris in the cesspit.
Oh, I mean, Ian, do you not think this is like minor details that you left out when you made that phone call to the police?
He couldn't tell the police because Nick and Joe had threatened him and threatened his life, threatened the safety of Helen and Boris. But obviously, this is why Ian is not an author, because he's fucking shit at writing nonfiction.
It's fucking awful.
More details would come to light to prove that Ian was a garbage man full of shit. You see, upon the autopsy and examination of Helen's body, they would find some pretty hefty trace amounts of a prescription drug called zopiclone in Helen's system, but also in Helen's hair. And like quite a lot, a massive buildup of zopiclone was found in her hair.
So that's like the sleeping pill?
So zopiclone is a sleeping pill. Zopiclone have side effects of extreme drowsiness, obviously sleeping, memory loss, hallucinations, nausea, rash, so many more symptoms that Helen had been experiencing for months, that Helen had been complaining to friends about for months. Helen had been going to the doctor, and it turns out that old garbage man Ian Stewart had been prescribed zopiclone for quite some time.
Ian.
This guy. So the prosecution are claiming that Ian had been drugging Helen for months. He would always make her breakfast, would be making her food all the time. So he'd been slipping her some zoppies. They are saying that on the 11th of April, 2016, he has given her daily dose of zopiclone. So he's waited for her to fall asleep, and then he has suffocated her, whether that be smothering her with a pillow. They don't really know. And then he has disposed of her body in the cesspit.
Oh, that is just so wrong.
They have also done an autopsy on Boris. And no cause of death has been determined, but I just pray to baby Morbid Jesus that they didn't throw him in there alive.
Well, no, it'd be in his lungs.
True.
They
couldn't determine it though. But they also don't know if Helen was alive in there either.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Disgusting. Yeah. So, Rainey, this court case would go on for 7 weeks. The jury would go and deliberate for 5.5 hours.
See you later, Ian.
And you all know where this is leading to.
Ian, you big garbage man.
Garbage man would be found guilty on the 22nd of February 2017 of the murder of Helen Bailey. He would be sentenced to a non-parole period of 34 years, so life in prison. And this would mean that he would not be eligible for parole until he's about close to 90.
Oh, honestly. That's awful.
It's so dark. And he's so gross. I don't know why she called him a gorgeous grey-haired widower, because he's just gross. I'll show you a picture. He looks like such a
cesspit.
And it's so sad, Rainey, because remember the book with the dedication to a happily ever after? Oh, my God. Oh, poor Helen. That's him, and that's her, little Helen.
Oh, and Helen.
Rainey, this is tragic, but the story does not end there.
Far out. I mean, you did say there's some twists and turns.
So the police are thinking, right, Ian Stewart has murdered his fiancée, Helen Bailey. Is it possible that he had anything to do with the death of his first wife?
Oh.
Now, Ian was married to a Diane Stewart. They had been together for many, many years. They got married in 1986. They had 2 sons together, and Ian claimed that he went to the supermarket, and when he came home, he found Diane collapsed on the ground near the clothesline. She'd clearly had an epileptic fit, and he goes to call 999. This was 2010 when Diane died. So it's 2017 when he's been convicted. How they're going to figure this out is going to be very, very challenging because Ian had consented to Diane's body being cremated.
Well, of course.
But what he also consented to was to have Diane's brain donated to science.
Oh, Ian.
So the police are thinking, if we can track down this brain, we may have a shot at looking a little deeper into the cause of death.
Yeah.
Diane's cause of death was put down to what's called SUDEP, sudden death in epilepsy. It's not super common. About 600 people die a year from this condition. But her friends and family thought it was very strange because Diane hadn't had an epileptic fit for 18 years, Rainey.
What?
She had this thing well under control. She was on medication, so they thought it was really weird.
Strange.
But the police have a small win because they would find Diane's brain stored in a pickle jar on a lab shelf somewhere. Sorry. They take this thing and they do some digging, literally. And Rainey, it would be revealed that Diane had actually died from a prolonged restriction to her breathing from an outside source. They could determine that from her brain, from the examination of her brain, that she had been starved of oxygen and was most likely killed by either a chokehold, being smothered, or probably a plastic bag.
Oh my God.
She had no visible injuries, so they don't think she was strangled. So she was either smothered or a plastic bag. In November 2020, they would collect Ian from his prison cell, and it's actually amazing. They've got it on body cam footage, and they've got him in the car, and he has no idea what's going on. It's been just collected from prison. Like, what's going on?
He's probably like, oh my God, I'm a free man.
Yeah, maybe. He's probably thinking it's my lucky day. And they give him the news that he is being charged with the murder of his first wife, Diane Stewart. And he, again, is like, you've got to be joking. Have you got nothing better to do? He is just appalled. They take him in for questioning. Again, crickets. He will not say a word. He just sits there looking like a big, dumb idiot and says nothing. It would eventually go to another trial. They would call many, many witnesses, friends, families, doctors, pathologists. And in February 2022, not too long ago, Ian would be found guilty of the murder of his first wife, Diane.
Good.
In the UK, they would sentence him to a whole life order. This is very rare, very, very uncommon. It's essentially, in America, they would call it life without parole. So he's sentenced to prison for the rest of his life. He will rot in jail. And it just feels so super, super dark when you sit and really think about the story, Rainey. This man, he murders his wife, and then he jumps on a chat room with other people going through the loss of their partners and starts chatting up poor Helen.
Yeah.
Whether or not his intention or his motive was to eventually murder her and take her fortune, I don't know. But you can just imagine him sitting there going, you know what? I got away with it the first time.
Yeah, just do it again.
I'm going to do it again.
All I've got to do is just put in 4 short years.
4 short years. So this is the horrible story. I feel so bad for Helen that that trip to Barbados would be the end of everything. Her husband,
awful.
It would lead to the murder of her puppy dog, Boris, and herself. It's just wild. Rainey, can you handle the true crime and scandal?
Absolutely not. I mean, what a way to go. And just to chuck her in with the sewage, you know?
It's just it's so disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, obviously all murderers think they're smart, but this guy, I thought he was pretty clever.
He really
didn't
did.
he?
He certainly
very
did.
cold and calculated and very planned out because, you know, going on those chat rooms, it wasn't to go genuinely meet someone. He had a plan.
Yeah, and it was so dumb because Helen had a lot of money and was looking after him and she loved him. It just seems so stupid.
Well, look, Lolly, that leads me to ask you, can you handle this crime and scandal?
Absolutely not. I just feel so bad. Poor Helen, poor Diane. She looks super lovely. I watched a lot of interviews and videos with Helen and she just seemed like such a lovely lady, super talented writer. She'd put a lot of great things out into the world, helped a lot of people. And I just cannot believe it. This man, he was involved in her like press and interviews, book dedications. Like, dude, the fuck.
Awful.
So I hate it. It's very, very awful. And you just don't know who you're meeting online, do you?
No.
Can't trust anyone.
Pretty gross, but you wouldn't think that he's a murderer.
No, you wouldn't.
Well, Lolly, thank you very much. That is a story that I've never, ever heard of and one that is very, very awful, and he deserves to be taken out with the trash.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Can't Handle the Crime and Scandal. Guys, I know we've been a little quiet on the retreat front, but it is happening. The details are coming out. October 2025, the Bali Girl Hang Retreat is happening. If you want to join the waitlist, head over to can'thandlepodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Instagram or Facebook, or just wait for the full details to go live.
That's exciting. Yes, we've got a bit of planning to do. We're going to make sure everything is absolutely perfect until it is finally released.
That's right.
It is coming, guys.
It's going to be amazing.
Get excited.
Get ready. All right, team. Well, look, take it easy. Stay safe. I don't even know what's the advice today. If you've got a cesspit in your house, you better concrete it over because who knows what could happen.
All right, guys, I'm going to be telling the story next week, and a little hint, there's going to be a lot of baggage, all right?
Oh my God.
So just you wait.
I do know this one. It's awful, awful, awful. All right, team, we will see you there.
Bye.
Love you, bye.